Welcome to a new edition of FO Talks. I'm Peter Isackson, Fair Observer's Chief Strategy Officer. Today I'm joined by Yves Zieba. Yves is a consultant and founder of his Geneva-based consultancy company, Syntezia. Yves focuses, I think, on sustainability initiatives, and he has a background in the world of media and journalism, notably working for quite a long time with Reuters. Yves has suggested the topic, how artificial intelligence is transforming journalism and media ethics today. A topic I'm very much interested in because I'm writing about it. So Yves, how would you begin answering that question? How is it influencing journalism and media ethics?
Well, thank you very much, Peter, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be with you for this interview. It's a very topical question, and I think the artificial intelligence is transforming journalism and the media very rapidly, and in many different ways. And what I've been particularly interested in is to follow up what is taking place in terms of business models and in terms of ethics.
So when you say business models, you're talking about the business models used by media companies, or are you talking about corporations in general? Or
corporations are changing their business models as well, but I was referring to the media companies and the fact that they basically face a choice. If they ignore the disruption of AI, they are likely to face a lot of threats from many changes coming from many different places. And if they adopt the artificial intelligence, they are likely to seize opportunities. And that goes with changing their value proposition and their business models, and that's the part I'm most interested in.
Okay, so you say, I mean, the way you frame the question, if they decide to adopt AI, but is it possible today not to adopt AI?
I think it takes a lot of courage not to adopt AI today because it's such a hype. And I think that it's a question of survival for media companies if they choose not to adopt AI. The reason for that is the AI-powered business model are so transformational and so rapid that if let's imagine that you're a media company and you choose not to adopt AI, you're likely to see a drop in your audience, a drop in your advertising revenue, a drop in your subscription. So that could go very rapidly in the wrong direction.
So if you're talking about adopting AI, I imagine this could happen at several levels. AI can be a productivity tool for producing media or doing the traditional jobs of media, or possibly even replacing people who are doing those jobs. And the other is to be a factor in the product itself. How do you see it? And where are the media companies thinking about? In which direction do you think they're going?
Well, I think there are opportunities to seize, and this is very much what I want to focus on. So the first opportunity I see with AI is the hyper-personalization, the fact that you can tailor the news or the format of the news to the audience. And that has a knock-on effect, which are very positive with a deeper engagement. So you can actually have a dialogue instead of having a one-size-fits-all approach, one journalist pushing a content to n amount of readers. So I think the hyper-personalization is a good thing, and that creates new opportunities for people to facilitate the dialogue. And if you take the example of Netflix as a business model, you can see how this is completely transforming the industry. But more to the point, to answer your question, I think it can be both a product. So we can see the emergence of new products from the media, which is really good, but also automation of existing steps in the production process, which I see as a positive trend, because it's first going to be replacing like the robot tasks, the least interesting things to do for the journalist, things which are a bit repetitive. And ideally, that will free up their time for more interesting activities like investigations, or added value services, like premium services, for tailoring the news to the preferences of a more targeted audience.
You mentioned two things which I think you feel are complementary, and I feel they might be contradictory. You talk about tailoring content to the audience, but I think media have always tried to do that. Does that simply mean that they have new ways of doing it? But the contradiction, or potential contradiction, I want to talk about is, you at the same time you talk about dialogue, and tailoring to an audience seems to me more in the way of monologue than dialogue. And I'm very interested in anything you imagine can be developed to foment and to foster real dialogue, which is a big thing. Which my hopes with AR are focused on the ability to develop a culture of dialogue. Now, are media companies thinking of, or are they capable of acting on that kind of dialogue? And is there the contradiction that I mentioned?
I don't know if there is a contradiction. It's interesting that you point this out. What I meant by hyper-personalization is that there is an infobesity. I mean, we were talking about infobesity 20 years ago, but now it's exponential. So if you take it from the reader's viewpoint, the offer in terms of news feed is huge, and selecting the feeds you want, or verifying your sources, is becoming a really important task. And I think the media and the journalists can help their audience do that, like select their sources of interest, select their trusted sources, their preferred journalists, develop a personalized relationship between the journalist and the audience. Here I'm thinking public relations, public affairs, so all these intermediary new roles that are created in the sphere of dialogue between the media, the politics, the decision makers, the corporate spokespersons, that kind of thing. So personalizing newsfeed as a reader, I think, is great. The viewpoint you're taking is the journalist viewpoint, and whether they can tailor their content to the audience. I think it becomes also possible, or more doable, because the production goes much faster. So where you or I would create 20 articles, I don't know, a month, now we can make 200 articles per month, because of the speed that AI provides. And if we can write more, we can tailor better, I think. But please explain where you see the contradiction. I'm happy to hear
Well,
about it.
I see a potential contradiction, and I think the whole business of AI and its impact on society, not the media, but society in general, has been very ambiguous. People are saying, "Oh, yes, we can do things faster, we can do more, we can do better, we can do possibly more accurate if we can avoid hallucinations." But at the same time, isn't this going to overwhelm us? Isn't this going to transform even our identities? And I think these are valid questions, obviously, but I don't see at the present moment, I don't see anyone coming up with an all-purpose solution to these things. So I totally agree that what we're faced with now is trying to take on board the meaning of having what I call artificial voices in our environment. And that's why I want to come back to the question of dialogue, because and I love your suggestion that consumers of the news could be in a dialogue with the producers of the news, including the journalists. That's something I'm working on in some sense. I don't know how to do it. I can see, I can see problems uh, because that relationship has never existed. Uh, we've had broadcast media for a good century now, and turning it into something where dialogue is authentic seems to me not. I'm not. I think this is the way we have to go, but I don't know how to get there. And if you have some recipes, I'm interested.
Well, I like dialogue, and I had the privilege to meet journalists, and I think their viewpoint is always very rich. And I have also seen how they operate. And when I was working for Reuters on the business side, there was like a Chinese wall that were preventing even our
Exactly.
us colleagues from the editorial employees, because they didn't want to be influenced, and they didn't want to be there was a very strict line, so that the editorial content was not influenced by customers or even employees. So since I left Thomson Reuters, I have other opportunities. I can talk freely with journalists, because I don't represent a client, or I don't represent an institution. And but you're right. These are new, potentially new kind of dialogues, and I think they can trigger civic education. I think they can trigger citizen journalism, because AI is mainly a technology, so it's not a value proposition in itself. It's a resource. And when you still need somebody to report on the facts, and you still need somebody to analyze and to articulate insights and to digest information. So the AI for me is a tool to speed up the process. I like the fact that you've mentioned hallucination, because on the risk side, there is an increased risk of manipulation or disinformation. So I think in a similar way as we've seen a fact-checking job appearing, I think there will be soon, if not yet, hallucination checkers, because they're not easy to detect. Like, I don't know if you've tried it, but if I hide an hallucination in an article, it's quite difficult to detect it. So I think it's changing the role of journalists, because they can produce quicker and more from a volume viewpoint. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's the reality. So I think infobesity will increase. And I think the role of the editorial is changing as well, because they now need to trust their journalists, which is the case, but they now also need to see if there is not somewhere an hallucination that was inserted without anyone noticing it.
Yes, hallucination is a big topic, which I've written about myself. My take on it today is that hallucination is a part of human culture. Now it's also a part of artificial human culture. Uh, and what we really need to, and I think we oversimplify it if we say a hallucination is something that is just contrary to facts, because the problem with AI is that AI has a tone of authority when we're talking about chatbots and how they work. You ask them a question, and they will answer it even when they don't know the answer, and that's what we call hallucinations. They'll just produce something out of the blue that is credible in terms of formal communication, So that's a specific problem of AI. But of course, people we talk to hallucinate, or they propagandize, or they distort. So if you're trying to root out disinformation, there, as you say, there's no simple way of doing it. Even fact checking is just one small part of the problem, in my opinion. But I'm curious. You mentioned citizen journalism, which is what we practice at Fair Observer. But in a media company like Reuters or any traditional commercial media company, what do they consider citizen journalism to be part of their new vocation, or is it the enemy?
Well, I wouldn't be able to speak in the name of Reuters because I left the company so long ago, and so I don't want to go this direction. But what I can say about this hallucination and fact checking is that there is a kind of ethical imperative to be transparent about, exactly as we are transparent about the sources or the people we interview. There is an imperative to be transparent about the AI we use, if only to be able to explain where the content is coming from. And we've spoken about speed, so AI is improving speed. Accuracy might be arguable, so there may be more or less hallucination than in real life. But what remains is trust. So whether you trust the person you're talking to, whether you trust the sources of information, or whether you trust the tool that has been automating the production process. As a reader, as the man in the street, I don't know. I don't have visibility about the production process. I don't know if it's automated or not. So I'm likely to put my trust on the person who signed the article or on the institution, which provides maybe a higher level of guarantee that there is an editorial process and that there are ethical imperatives being respected. And this is probably where I would put my trust when I choose my newsfeed. Now, more to the point about civil journalism or civic education, or like getting everyone to become a journalist. I think it's a level of trust. So as well, so in a way, we can trust anyone who happens to be at a given place to report what's happening. And now with everyone having a smartphone, it's a huge help for the journalists because they can't be everywhere at the same time. So that provides a huge, improvement and possibilities to have eyes and ears everywhere all the time, which was before impossible. And then you have individual trust into the person who reports. So if it's, I would have a higher trust level in a professional journalist, of course, than in a normal citizen.
Can we take that as a rule that we should have higher trust in a professional journalist? Because in my experience, I can find a lot of journalists I would never trust, and I've learned not to trust. So what you said earlier is that the personalization part of it would be that people could be focus on the journalists they do trust or they want to hear. But doesn't that take us back to the social media problem of creating echo chambers where people are only exposed to the things they already believe, and some of those beliefs may be hallucinations, maybe their own hallucinations. So I'm not trying to play the devil's advocate because I'm actually I'm in favor of any initiative that makes sense to turn AI into a productive, honest, trustworthy tool of social construction. and not just of information. And that's my real question. I would say is, what is the role of media companies? Is it just to provide information, or is it to have an active role in building a coherent society and making people not happy, but capable of functioning as vast ensembles of people with diverse interests, but a common interest in prosperity, justice, security. Uh, and can AI play a role in changing the way media think about these things?
Well, these are excellent points. I think what your questions show is that media is much more than just reporting news or facts. It has a much bigger role to play in the society. And that's why I would say even by and large, media is a public good and in the public interest. What strikes my attention is the fact that you've mentioned there are journalists that you can trust, and there may be individual citizens which you could trust more, which I think is an interesting viewpoint and absolutely true. Maybe what I can add is it's not only a question of trust in the person, it's also a question of trust in their ability to cover a particular topic. So I may be a rather honest person, but I'm more knowledgeable on certain topics than on others. So if you ask me a question about Geneva, I'm likely to be a trusted source. If you ask me a question about a topic I know very little about or a country I've never been to, my point of view has a very limited interest. It comes back to knowing the individual you're talking to and on which topic you can trust their voice. That brings us back to this notion of dialogue and where you put your trust. That's for me an opportunity because the journalists or the citizens who produce quality content are likely to have a higher trust level from their audience, and over time it's likely to play in their favor.
Yeah, these are major questions with very few concrete answers. Earlier, you said that you've been speaking to journalists. Have you been asking them about how they perceive AI and its role in their professional lives? And if so, what do you detect? What are their feelings? What are their concerns?
Yeah, I think I've been speaking with different journalists. Some see a very good advantage, for instance, about creative writing and the fact that these tools can help you produce more, better, quicker, nicer content. So there are lots of lots of benefits. On the dark side, I also see people who have lost their jobs and maybe were reporting on local sports or were reporting on interesting topic with a little audience. Let me put it this way, and they are the first one to be impacted by the rise of AI. I see both sides. I see the jobs that are lost from media companies and the individuals who are doing these tasks. I actually try my best to help them find a new motivation in the same industry or to change industry. So I see the impact and the disruption already happening today. That's why I like to see the rise of AI in the media as risks and opportunities, and that you need to cover both. Talking only about the risks is going to be killing your viability, because if you don't use AI, other people will do it quicker, better than you. And at the same time, I see that it's a very rapid disruption on the market.
And in your contact with journalists, do you get the impression that their employers are putting pressure on them to use AI or not to use AI, or to use it in ways that they don't want to use it? And this raises the question of the culture of the media itself, but also the management policies that people employ. What?
Yeah, that makes me smile, because my experience is that what I've seen is management dictating maybe the AI tool you can use and the AI tool that you cannot use. And usually, they authorize 3 and prohibit everything else. In reality, I think journalists, like citizens, are already using 10 or 15 of them privately. So I think the management or the lawyers are 3 steps behind, and the usage is already massive. So I work with different client companies, different client organizations. So it's funny to arrive in a new context where you can only use 1 AI or 3 AI, and they tend to be the poorest one. And you come back at home and you have 10 more which are much more powerful, and you're like, why are they doing that? And I think that's the current situation, because it's a relatively new technology, a new resource, and the younger generation use it very easily, and the regulators or the management are a bit struggling to determine whether we should use it, how we should use it, who would own what in terms of content. And I think they hesitate between encouraging it or restricting it, and they don't really know the pros and cons of each decision. So that's why there's a rise in a chief AI officer role, because in the current boards, nobody really knows what to do. And I think it's an opportunity for many individuals who know AI from the different viewpoints to become, to take on these new roles.
That's interesting for me. You're saying that there is now, for media companies, a new position called Chief AI Officer. Is that something that exists now?
Well, I didn't check for media companies, but there is definitely a new role at the board level which exists, which is called Chief AI Officer, and this is basically because current boards realize that it's a disruption, and no one is really an expert, or if they are experts, they tend to be experts in their function, like finance, legal, HR, etc. But this is so transversal that it's usually, if you don't have the full expertise in the board, it's a good idea to find the expertise. Because if you make very strict decisions of prohibiting AI inside your company or your media, that could be lethal for your company. So yeah, but it's the same thing in public sector. I think the main risk is not to use AI or to wait forever and then to wake up too late. It's really the risk of not doing anything, which to me is the biggest risk.
So I'm curious. I'm very curious about this topic. Given what you've just described, would you say that the role of a CAIO would be technical or strategic? are they being asked to engage in strategic thinking about how AI has an impact on all the operations and all the commercial outcome of the company, or are they just there to advise people on what tools to use or not to use and what functionalities they might be able to exploit? How do you see that?
I'm a bit biased because I work in strategy, so for me it's a very strategic role. So it's not about being the top
But are they expecting
engineer.
you to be their strategist, or are they trying to build an internal strategy?
Well, I think they realize that AI is important, that they need to do something about it, that it's nobody's role or everyone's role, and that's not really good because you could have 100 use cases in finance, 100 use cases in HR, and 50 use cases in legal, and having people in the board who don't really master the topic. And that becomes a big risk if you start to be transforming your organization in all functions without a clear, coordinated strategy execution on AI. So for me, it's a typical strategic role. Of course, having the technical expertise helps, especially if you want to build a product with AI. So if you want to build a product, leveraging AI capabilities and understanding the different kind of AIs, etc. It's very important to have the technology knowledge. So time will tell if if the CTO will become the CAIO, or if it's the CIO, or if it's going to be a new role that will stay longer than the hype phase. But right now, I think it's important to add people with expertise on AI at the highest level of the media companies.
So in
Because
terms of
otherwise they are missing the opportunity.
in terms of hierarchy, if there's a CAIO and a CTO, who's on top?
um, well, it's of course company specific. I don't think there is a rule. I think current CTOs will like to see AI as one technology amongst others, with with blockchain and networks and emails and all that. I think people who understand the power, the transformative power of AI, might build the case that AI is such an opportunity that it's cutting across many functions and therefore needs to be put on top. So I think you or me could argue both ways.
Okay, I'll ask you one final question before we stop. Um, given everything that we've talked about, uh, and obviously you've mentioned a lot of things that are going on, which a lot of people don't suspect, and I've learned a lot from this discussion. Um, in your opinion, are we beginning to see things fairly clearly, or would you say there are far more unknowns than knowns we can deal with? And if that's the case, how do we approach those unknowns?
To me, there are more unknowns than knowns, and things are changing extremely fast. Like 6 months ago, it was all about prompt engineering, and everybody was reading books about how to prompt. Now we know that we don't need to prompt anymore because it's going to be natural language very soon, if not already. So that's the type of rapid change that we are facing. And how to deal with unprecedented change and rapid change. I like the fact that you asked the question because I've designed a framework called Flux, which is specifically tailored to deal with uncertainties and unknowns. because to me that's the reality. So if we are very pragmatic, we face unknowns and uncertainties, and we need to live with it. And I prefer that approach to pretending that you can predict. So even if there are AI that are very strong for predicting, but I prefer to face the reality of unknowns and uncertainties and to have a framework to do that.
Okay, well, thank you, Yves. This is a very enlightening discussion for me, and I enjoyed it.
Thank you, Peter.
I think we'll be speaking again, either privately or publicly, because it's a topic we're both very much involved in. So, thank you
Thank
again.
you. Thank you very much for the great questions, and I look forward to continue the dialogue privately or publicly.
Yes, let's provide an example of dialogue so that your
Yeah,
client can understand what dialogue is.
it was dialogue number 1, and I look forward to the next.
Okay, thank you, Yves.
Take care, Peter.
Yeah, bye.
Bye-bye.
Join the conversation at Fair Observer and subscribe to our YouTube channel.